Now, how companies shrink their taxes by leaving the United States? To me, it would make sense. Burger King, by the way, again, owned by Brazilians, but they've merged with the Canadian donut and coffee chain, Tim Hortons. And if an American company decides to reincorporate in a foreign country, the process is known as inversion. I don't know what's wrong with inversion if you wind up paying less taxes. The United States has the highest tax rate among developed economies. Most U.S. corporate income is subject to a 35% federal tax bite. Canada's overall effective corporate rate is about half of that of the United States. Now, joining us again today, as he has done before, is financial strategist Clark Hodges. And Clark, I note, and didn't hear till yesterday, that Brazilians own Burger King. Now Burger King is going to team up with Tim Hortons, which is pretty big, by the way. Just got an email from one of our listeners in Abu Dhabi, and he says they had them there. What's wrong with what Burger King did? What are the financial repercussions here?
I don't think there's anything wrong with what they did. I don't see it any differently than you and I trying to get a tax credit somehow on our individual taxes. And to me, it's the same type thing, so I don't think they've done anything wrong.
And other companies have done the same thing. And do you think, as I do, and I'm no financial wizard, believe me, I'd be retired by now if I was, but do you think that if we lowered our bite to, let's say, 10 to 15%, that a lot of companies would come running right back here?
Well, what I think would happen if you did that is you'd have a lot of money that's sitting overseas from American companies that do business over there. They're keeping it overseas because if they bring it back, they get double taxed on it. They're getting taxed in the country they're making the profit, and then they would get taxed at the United States corporate tax level by bringing it back. And so I think what you'd have is a huge windfall of money coming into the country, and the companies that choose to invest in their own growth and maybe hire people, Mr. Obama, that would increase the unemployment, and the middle class would benefit from it. Which I think is a step that the administration doesn't understand. But this whole inversion thing is miscategorized. Burger King's not going to pay any less corporate tax in America than they have. It's trying to get around paying the double taxation on international profit.
Exactly.
And bringing that money back.
They have $499 million sitting offshore right now. But look at Apple. Apple has more than $100 billion abroad sitting offshore. And this is the world's second largest hamburger fast food chain. And they want to do some expanding into foreign markets.
Right.
I don't blame them.
I don't know what would be so wrong with dropping that rate and letting these companies that have cash over there bring it back.
Well, it certainly would keep the price of a burger stabilized. It might provide for more jobs. Obama wanting on federal installations now, the minimum wage, which is a starter wage for people to get started. All of my children worked in things like that. They're going to have to leave military bases, and military families counted heavily on places like, especially the families on Burger King and places like that. And some of them just may be, leaving the PX area or leaving the bases because they can't afford to pay what the minimum wage would be at $10.10 an hour. And again, it's a starter job. It's learning how to get involved in the workforce.
Right. And I think one thing that's overlooked is thousands of these stores are owned by franchisees.
Right.
They're not even owned by the corporation. And so you're basically going in front of the American public and saying, shame on Burger King. Do you think that's going to affect their sales? And the franchisees that have nothing to do with this, their sales are going to be affected by this. That's the small business owner being affected by this.
Well, the only thing I've heard about Burger King and their franchisees is that they've spent money on the stores to spruce them up, to make them look better. And believe me, if they're profitable and more profitable, it's going to hold prices down. I mean, they're not going to. They might even have a better deal.
Right, and not to even mention if they're profitable in their community, it's going to help that community.
It sure is, and I'm rather sorry about the Cinnabon is another one that might have to leave military bases as well, because they can't afford to pay $10.10 an hour to somebody who's flipping burgers. But eventually that person will go out and get a job somewhere else and go up the ladder, like we all did.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, I don't know what the big hubbub is about this, or why anyone would think that, again, owned by Brazilians.
Well, you've been around long enough to know what it is. It's election time. It's about cutting to the next election. These politicians have the next election on their mind. They don't have the issue on their mind.
Well, I agree with you 100% there, but they're still going to have the whopper, but they're not going to pay a whopping amount of taxes that they'd pay if they were located here. And they've merged with a very good company. I just got an email from a fellow who, here it is, I'll read it to you. Clark, I was introduced to Tim Hortons when I lived in Canada, Tom, in 2008 and 2009. I love the place. There's about 10 of them here in Abu Dhabi, that's where he is now, and a few others in the country. I'm a regular customer. So it just looks to me like two well-respected fast food, if you want to, the coffee and donuts, and now the burger as well, have gotten together. So what? So what if they don't pay a lot more taxes? To me, it's only good for the franchisees and for the people in this country. And I think it's much ado about nothing when Obama and Senator Schumer indicates there's something unpatriotic about it.
Right. Why don't we grab the portfolios of those congressmen and see who owns stock in companies that are doing this?
Well, Chuck Schumer apparently is going to try to introduce a bill to stop this, but it's not going to go anywhere. They'd never pass it in the House.
Because these guys own stock in companies. They're well off because they're investing in companies' stock. And guess what? If your company makes more of a profit, your stock price is subject to go up.
Well, let's forget about the politicians for a moment. Doesn't a company's responsibility, let's say, to their shareholders and their stockholders to maximize their profits?
You bet.
That's a number one, right?
That's a number one. I mean, my firm, Hodges Capital, we manage money. We invest in small and mid-cap stocks, and that's a big deal. Management's consideration of the shareholders and how they view the shareholders. Do they view them as unimportant, or do they actually view them as co-owners of the business? Goes a long way in helping us make a decision whether to invest in a company or not.
All right. Well, listen, thanks for taking time from your financial standpoint to kind of explain it today. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it from the get-go, and I think the real answer to be, want to keep them here? Lower the corporate tax rate like the Prime Minister of Canada did, down to 15% if you do it here. They won't go there. They won't go over there. Apple. Who would think that Apple, a well-respected company, has, and I have an Apple product, $100 billion sitting offshore. I think they wouldn't mind having it here, but why bring it here to have that billion taxed like crazy?
Yeah, pay off the debt, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I think the government would waste it. I think it's better off in the hands of Apple and their investors.
No doubt.
Okay.
That's why tax loopholes should be done, because the government would waste it.
All right. Thanks an awful lot for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you again sometime. So